Okay, welcome everybody. Good to see y'all. I'm a little bit happy this morning. Can you guess why?
Rain.
Rain, baby. How much did we get? All right, I need the right answer. How much did we get?
Enough.
What'd you say?
2.2
2.2 tenths. This is my man right there. This is the man. That's right. That's right. But it was great. We could use another inch, to be honest with you. But that was great. I will take that, sir. Would you pray with me? Father, as we discover or dive into another aspect of your magnificent creation, give us a sense of awe and wonder at the majesty of it all, and one such as you would make what you have made. We want to see that side of you, Father. So we ask you to bless Bill as he speaks to us. Grant him wisdom, good communication, and help us to grasp just a little bit of what you've made. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Okay, before I introduce the speaker who's going to introduce our speaker, I just thought this would be a good time. See, a lot of times it's hard to get doctors, all right? So, you got to make an appointment and all this time. But we have an extraordinary opportunity here this morning. We have a doctor here with us, and he's free, all right? So I was just wondering if anybody here has any aches or pains at all, would you please raise your hand?
Don't form a line.
Anyway, thank y'all for doing that. That's good. I'd like to introduce, I thought what better person to introduce someone of the medical world than someone else from the medical world. So I'd like to welcome our very own Dawn Break of Day Griggs. Come
on. Anything that I say that's inaccurate, feel free to correct me. But I'm here to introduce Dr. Jackson, who I've known quite a while. So just a little bit of background. He received his MD degree from EVMS.
Dawn, can everybody hear
Can you hear me?
Dawn? We have a mic for it. Can we give her his mic,
oh.
Dawn?
Oh, you love it, Dawn. Come on.
You get Dawn.
Okay. Hello?
There you go.
All right.
But hold it in front of your face, Dawn.
Okay.
Not out here.
Okay. To start again, so Dr. Jackson received his MD degree from EVMS, completed his residency at MCV. That was, I think, a Riverside practice. He's worked in the medical field for about 43 years. Is that right? His emphasis.
I'm old, right?
So am I.
Started as a teenager.
So am I. His emphasis is on preventative care, disease management, and he treats the whole person. He's board certified by the American Board of Family Medicine and a member of the American Academy of Family Physicians and the Virginia Academy of Family Physicians, and he's currently employed with Bayview Physicians. He's extremely active in Christian missions. Just recently participated in the Mully Children's Family Missions, which is considered the world's largest family. Started with New Harvest Missions, I think back in 2012. Serving as a family practice physician. He works tirelessly, and this is a quote from a friend, Denise. Denise Archer, yeah. He works tirelessly to care for all of his patients, always puts his needs last. Like I said, most recently his mission was in Kenya. This was this past March 2026. And I understand he loves Chex Mix, Oreos, Mountain Dew,
My credibility as a good physician.
and ABBA. So, and just on a personal note, I've known Dr. Jackson for a long time. I've also been a nurse about 43 years. I told him, I said, I knew him when his hair was dark. Mine was dark at one time as well, not anymore. He literally is the best physician I've ever met. And that's the truth. I'm not, he's caring, and I've met a lot of physicians in 43 years of nursing, I can tell you that. And he is by far the best. Just a personal account when Allison Cover was going through her illness with cancer. There was a day I was over there, I think it was a Sunday, I don't actually recall, and there were some things I was really concerned about. Debated, okay, who's the doctor on call? And Bill called, and as Providence would have it, it was Dr. Jackson. His daughter Rebecca came up because she had access to her labs and whatnot. So he called back, I gave him all the scoop. He was out getting food, I think, for his family.
Probably Chex Mix and Mountain Dew.
Probably, and Oreos.
And Oreos, yeah.
And he graciously said, I'll stop by. And he came to the house and examined Allison, looked at the labs, developed a treatment plan, all went well. And every Sunday I would go and find him, give him a bit of an update on Allison. And I said, I'm really sorry that I bothered you and, was a little bit of an alarmist. He said, absolutely not. You were not. You didn't overreact. I'm glad you called. Call me anytime. So that's just a little snippet into the kind of man he is, into the kind of doctor he is. He's just an all-around great guy. So without any further ado, I give you Dr. Bill Jackson.
I'm not used to using a mic, so hopefully this will work out okay. I think it's Romans 1:20 that says this, and God's invisible qualities and divine nature are clearly understood from what has been made. And I think when you see what goes on in the human body, it's, again, just points to that as well as all the other topics y'all have gone through. Of course, from Psalm 139, pretty famous verse. I think it talks about intricacy that God used to make us. When you talk about being knit together, my mom used to knit, and she would miss one little stitch and have to go back to do it right. So we were knit together, we were woven together. I think just from the very beginning, God had great plans for us. The body is often used as an analogy of the body of Christ. And I think as we go through things and talk about the different organs and how they all interact, you'll see it's a great analogy to use. We can't talk about all the organs, obviously. Talk about some of the more interesting ones and the ones that most of us are familiar with. Everybody sitting here, we all started with two little cells, just a sperm and an egg, who fall in love and form a zygote. And then from that zygote, we have developed this great. It's not that funny. This intelligent, good-looking, smart, funny guy. So anyway, it all starts with two cells. We're not going to talk a lot about embryology. I will say this: embryology, one of the most fascinating courses I took in medical school. If somebody could go through an embryology class and not believe in a divine creator, they got blinders on. There's no way. When all these cells that start with two divide, and somebody divides into a heart cell, somebody into a brain cell, somebody else into a kidney cell, how all that is programmed is just unbelievable, fascinating, and complex. So this is the embryo at 5 weeks. You can see that the cardiovascular system is already starting at 5 weeks. Somewhere between 5 and 6 weeks, a detectable pulse can be found, around 110 beats per minute. So right on, we're starting to develop. And then at age 9 weeks, 8 to 9 weeks, it starts to develop into what you would obviously see as a early human body. All the parts are pretty much formed by now. And then from then on, it's just kind of growing and develop. But here, just at 9 weeks, you can see that's obviously a human. For the most part, even though for humans, obviously the term is around 40 weeks, once the baby hits around 23 weeks, usually it can survive outside the womb. So even though we're going to talk about the complexity of the human body, it really starts with the complexity of the cell. We could spend this lecture just talking about the cell itself. All the different components of the cell that contains, again, our DNA that will replicate into RNA and form all the parts of our body. And again, everything's programmed in this little cell, again, what cell's gonna do what and continue to replicate. These are the cells in the human body. You know, men have 36 trillion cells, women 28 trillion cells. My daughter, who was very instrumental in putting this together, by the way, I'm not a technical person, when she looked at those numbers, she said, well, it's certainly not because you guys have more brain cells than you do. But just to look at the numbers, again, all point to God's creation. Who could come up with this? You know, we have 330 billion cells are replaced every day, which works to almost 4 million cells every second. Cells are turning over and regenerating. So trillion is, you know, like 36 with 12 zeros after it, I think. So that's a lot of cells. Most cells don't last forever. There's a few exceptions. Red blood cells last about 4 months. Gut cells in the small bowel usually last 3 to 5 days. So the lining of the bowels turn over very quickly. In the stomach, it's more like 2 to 3 days because of all the acids. So the cells tend to break down faster there. Even though it says 2 to 4 weeks for skin cells, most people quote 4 weeks. So every month you guys have new skin. You know, snakes shed their skin all at once. We shed it slowly at a time. Muscle cells can last up to 15 years. And brain and cardiac cells often a lifetime. For the heart cells, that's kind of good and bad. Good thing is you hardly ever have cancer of the heart because the cells just don't turn over. Bad news is if you do have a cardiac event, then the cells don't usually regenerate. And the same thing, brain cells too. If you have like a stroke or whatever, they just don't usually come back. Sometimes you can recruit other cells, but they just don't come back. First organ we're talking about is the heart. Yes, some people joke that God was the first person who did the heart transplant. This just points to the significance of the heart. As you'll see in a few slides, many years ago, the heart and the liver actually were felt to be part of the human emotion and brain and that type of thing. So, what we consider the brain. So, the value of the heart was noted way back a long time ago. The heart, if you look at some of these numbers, again, who could come up with something this infallible? 100,000 times a day, 2.5 billion pumps in a lifetime, in something that's a little more than the size of your fist. The energy that it generates, you can see drive a truck 20 miles. Ventricle, with all the power in just one little ventricle can squirt blood 30 feet. It says women's heart beat a little faster than men's. In my experience, it's not quite 8 times faster, but us guys think it's because we make our women, the ladies that we know, women's heart pitter-patter, so they beat a little faster. Women's perspective is that we just aggravate them so much, and that's why their heart beats a little faster. But 60,000 miles of blood vessels in our body. Isn't that incredible to me? It's just amazing how God designed things so well. The corneals are the only cells that don't get blood, they get by diffusion. And the heart has its own electrical system. You've heard the term heartfelt. That came from Aristotle, where he felt the body's emotions and came from the heart itself. Somebody said that if you left the kitchen faucet run for 45 years, that's how much blood would be pumped by the heart in a lifetime. Of course, some people have heart failure, heart attacks. Sometimes that's because of our lifestyle. But still, for the most part, the heart works pretty well. Pretty amazing organism. People do have heart attacks. Any idea what day of the week most heart attacks occur?
Tuesday.
Monday, right? Monday. And what day of the year do most heart attacks occur? Christmas. Very good. Very good. Christmas. Yeah. Surprising to me. Supposedly, there's different in the heartbeat. Supposedly, if 2 people are in love and they stare at each other for 3 minutes, their hearts will beat in synchrony. Now, I'm not sure how much that's been validated, so please don't go home and stare at each other and find out whether you're truly in love or not. Causes problems.
Bill,
Yes, sir.
you said that women's beats 8 times faster than men's. What's a man's regular heartbeat?
Usually it's defined now as, the question is, what's the normal heart rate for men and also for women? Usually it's defined, it used to be 60 to 100, and now it's 60 to 90. I personally, in my experience, don't think it's 8 times faster, maybe 2 to 4 times faster. And the reason for that is men's heart is about 10 ounces and ladies are about 8 ounces. So they have to pump a little faster because their volume is a little smaller. Average, you pump out about 2 ounces per heartbeat as an average.
So if I'd go to the doctor with Harriet, he would have said your heartbeat's okay, pump it at 120 or 180 beats.
No, 120, 100 would not be normal for anybody. That would definitely be some type of either heart problems or it's reacting to some other problem.
I don't understand what that means. Maybe I don't want to get us.
Well, let's just say a guy's heartbeat is 65, a lady's comparable, according to this, would be 73.
Oh,
8 beats more, right, per minute, I'm sorry, per minute.
Probably 8 beats per minute.
8 beats more per minute, right. Next is the lung. You know, as you know, we talk about things working together. Obviously, the heart and the lungs work together. The right heart pumps blood to the deoxygenated blood to the lungs, picks up the oxygen, pumps it to the left side of the heart, and then all the rest of our body. So 20,000 breaths per day. It's a lot of volume there. Gets rid of most of the waste in our body. 300 to 500 million alveoli, which is the little air sacs that the air, you know, the oxygen gets from the alveoli to the blood. In this just space right here. It's just amazing the guy was able to pack all that stuff in there. They felt the surface area of the alveoli was about the size of a tennis court. Again, how much all in our chest here. Who could design something like that? And the airways that bring air to the alveoli, again, 1,500 miles worth of airways in our lungs. Again, speaks to the amazing creativity of our Lord. Then the capillaries pick up the oxygen. And as we'll talk about with the immune system, the air we breathe is not sterile. You know, we're not breathing sterile air, so you're inhaling germs every time you take a breath. So everybody hold their breath, right? But our great immune system is able to take care of all that. So even though we're breathing in germs, they still don't, in general, cause problems. Every now and then you get pneumonia, bronchitis, et cetera, but for the most part, that's a pretty small percentage of the actual breaths we take. The brain, enough electrical current to power a 25-watt light bulb. 3 pounds. It's 70%, 60% fat as the brain. So if somebody uses a derogatory term, you're a fathead. It's actually right, you know. It's actually in a healthy body. It's actually the fattest organ in our body. 86 billion neurons in the brain alone. That doesn't count the nervous system outside of that. Interestingly, Einstein's brain was actually smaller than average. So the size of your brain doesn't necessarily correlate with your degree of intelligence. Be the rest of yourself, but 45 miles of nerves in our body. You know, we have our autonomic nervous system, which is just the nerves that keep, you know, you breathing. You don't have to tell your body to breathe. You don't have to tell your heart to beat. Drives the gastrointestinal system. Then we have the reflex arc, which doesn't even go to the brain. Like you put your hand on a hot stove and you jerk it back. That just goes to the spinal cord. So there's actually different systems in the body that God designed to do different things. The liver is a very I think, appreciated organ. Not to downplay the heart. I mean, I like my heart. I want to keep it. But the heart only does one thing. It pumps. That's it. It's just a pump. The liver, as you'll see, does a lot more than that. As far as this particular verse goes, it comes from Proverbs. It talks about the guy that was with the walking down the street to meet up with the adulterous wife, and it talks about, you know, because he's doing that arrow will pierce his liver. Back then, the liver was recognized, perhaps even more than today. It was a very important part of the body, and they almost took the liver and the heart together as parts of the soul. The heart, again, does one thing. The liver does 500 things. So it really does a whole lot. It's the largest internal organ. I think you can lose up to 20 or 75% of your liver, I think, and it can still regenerate enough to continue to function. You know, bottom line, hopefully that's not a problem for anybody in this room, but if you consume more than 1 alcoholic beverage per hour, you're gonna get in trouble. It's a great filter organ. Again, it does just so many different things, as you can see there. In Chinese, ancient Chinese, they felt that the liver was the source of the emotions, and if it got out of whack, it would give you emotional instability. There was actually some truth to that. If your liver doesn't work well, like if you have cirrhosis, certain toxins can build up in your body and actually cause mental status changes. And the Egyptian god Horus, after you died, he would actually weigh your liver to determine whether you were able to go into a good afterlife. Fortunately, we don't have to worry about that. We have God, Jesus who died for us, so we're not, our liver value is not being weighed at the end of our life. Yeah. So again, it produces bile. We'll talk about clotting later, but it helps regulate the clotting mechanisms. You know, it's a filter along with some other organs as well. Produces certain hormones, just a lot of different things.
Dr. Bill?
Yes, ma'am.
There's a popular thought that a liver detox. Can you talk about that?
The question is about the value of liver detoxification. In my literature, I haven't seen anything that promotes that as any type of sustained value, right? If you want to talk about liver detox, mainly it's eating, you know, a good healthy diet to me, because an increasing problem in our country is something called fatty liver, where you have fat deposit in the liver. I think it's up to 20 or 25% of the population have that, which up to 20% of people that have fatty liver can lead to cirrhosis even if you never have a drink. So to me, detoxification of the liver would mean, you know, good quality diet, staying away from a lot of fried foods, trans fats, that type of thing, Oreo cookies. Fasting. We have one comment here that feels that fasting is also helpful with detoxification too. But anything that's promoted like that, I haven't seen anything in my literature that's valued. The only value it is to the people who promote it and sell it.
Yeah.
This just points out to the significance of the kidneys as part of the sacrifice in the Old Testament, that they did feel the kidneys as well as the liver was of great value. The kidneys don't just produce urine. We think of kidneys to produce urine, but it does a whole lot of other stuff too. Again, it's an amazing filter. You know, so 2 kidneys together weigh only 10 ounces to do all the work that they do. They help with blood pressure control. You know, whether you drink too much or little, it regulates how much urine that it produces. Higher blood flow than the brain or the liver. Helps control a lot of different things. It also tells the bone marrow what to do. You know, we produce red cells, white cells, and platelets in our bone marrow, but it's the kidney that actually produces the hormone that actually tells how much red cells the bone marrow is supposed to produce. You can donate a kidney, obviously. Some people are born with 1 kidney. And the other interesting fact in the bottom, that the nephrons are the guys that kind of filter and produce urine, that type of thing. So if you put all the nephrons in both kidneys and laid them end to end, 5 miles worth of nephrons. Again, God packed all that into 2 kidneys that are a little more than the size of a fist that weigh 10 ounces. To me, that's remarkable, how he can build a structure like that. Bones, you know, we think of bones as just kind of something to hang our body parts on, but they really do a lot. And in the Bible, they were very valued. You know, they've got a lot of significance as far as their importance. You know, we all, I think, know about Ezekiel's calling the bones to life, or God called the bones to life in Ezekiel, because again, they just represent strength and you know, and resurrection. You know, the value of bones. You know, because Jesus was prophesied that none of his bones are going to be broken, because it's such an important part of our body, strength. And you know, even though us guys were formed from dust, you know, you guys, at least ladies, were formed from bone. So again, it speaks of strength and the resurrection. And bones are not just, you know, we think of bones as like, you know, like 2x4s or something, you know. But it's a living organism. And every 7 years, as you can see, it just regenerates. Bones are broken down and built up all the time based on the different stressors that we put on it. That's why sometimes when people had surgery and they're laying in bed for a while, the bones get weaker and weaker because they're not being structurally stressed. Mostly calcium and phosphorus, stronger than concrete, again, is a living organism. And, you know, in many of the bones, that's where your red cells and white cells and platelets are being produced, especially in the femur. Okay. Hmm. So who's this guy remind you of?
Rex.
Yes.
Who?
Who said that? Mike Wazowski, yeah, from
Mike Wazowski.
yeah, exactly, right, from Monsters Inc. There you go. You know, again, I think the eyes are, again, valued in the Bible as well. I think most of us would say if you had to lose one sense, you know, be it your hearing or your sense of taste or your sense of smell, I think most of us would choose the eye the last of anything. So again, very valued organ. It's a remarkable structure. You know, one eye weighs less than an ounce. And think of all the eye can do, and just 1 ounce each. You know, many cells. You know, eye cells, obviously, we're looking all around all the time, the most active in the body, blinking to keep the eyes moist so we don't dry out. You know, unless you have cataracts or other vision problems, you know, more than 1.5 miles, you can see just a candle in the pitch dark. That's how good the eyes are. They start very early in our development, and I didn't know this, that supposedly they stay the same size. You know, babies tend to have bigger eyes, you know, in proportion to their bodies, but apparently they stay the same size from time you're born till the time you pass away. And it's connected to the brain or the optic nerve. So again, it's pretty fascinating. These cells, you know, can look around and, you know, be able to distinguish and send electrical impulses to the brain and transfer the vision, electrical impulse to the brain, so able to interpret different things. So again, I don't know how they come up with 10 million different colors. I don't know how you do that. I'm sure multiple different shades and stuff, but pretty remarkable structure for being so small. Again, another analogy to our body parts through the Bible, because again, I think it's, you know, we're one of God's ultimate creations, and I think the Bible alludes to that a lot. Of course, it's responsible for hearing and balance. Has anybody here had vertigo? Okay. You know, vertigo for the most part is an inner ear problem. Every now and then it can be a brain problem, like stroke or other different things. But it's pretty remarkable. There's a structure in the inner ear. You have outer ear, middle ear, inner ear, and there's these little hair cells called cilia with calcium that's on top of that, and they kind of act as gyroscopes. And if some of those calcium flecks get out of balance, the ears are sending different signals to the brain, so the brain doesn't, you know, really can't see itself, you know, can't tell whether you're upright or to the right or left. So, but for the most part, it works. That's why we can, you know, walk around in the dark, we can bend down, we can turn, all because of, in part, because the little gyroscopes that in the inner ear, just again, for a structure so small, to control so much is pretty amazing. And just amazing how your ear, you know, you're listening to my voice or whatever, you can interpret, you know, the vibrations that my voice produces goes into that very complex structure there and gets transmitted to the brain to know what he's trying to say anyway. And again, it's just a remarkable apparatus that, I mean, who could come up with that? It's just remarkable. That's the You hear sound between 20 and 20,000 hertz. This is important because men's voice is a little lower than women. So sometimes when us guys don't always, you think we're not paying attention, your voice is high. We don't sometimes can catch the pitch of your voice. So that's an excuse for us guys. GI tract is often undervalued. Again, but Jesus, shows that, he used that as an analogy too, that it's not what we eat that makes us unclean, but it's what comes from our brain, not our heart. Again, it doesn't just absorb calories and nutrients. It's most of our immune system is from our gut because of all the stuff we eat. Again, the food we eat is not sterile. It's 30 foot long from stomach, small bowel to large bowel. Again, tennis court is often a used analogy between the kidneys, the lungs, and the bowel. So again, remarkable surface area. Again, got to pack 30 foot of GI stuff into our bellies just here. 30 feet of stuff kind of crammed in there, and it works almost all the time. Bacteria help us digest food. It's a symbiotic relationship. There can be bad bacteria in there, but fortunately usually, unless you take too many antibiotics, so you have to try to use good stewardship. So if the doctor doesn't always want to give you an antibiotic, that's one reason it kills the good bacteria too. Yes?
Is there a way that your small intestines can be rearranged?
The small house rearranged? Yeah.
Tangled or anything like that?
Yeah, the question is how does God put all that in here? Good question. What it is the bowels, even though in that caricature the bowel is inflated all around, it's actually not. The bowel is usually compressed when it's not going through food. And then when through something called peristalsis, where the muscles push the food through, after the food is through, the bowel collapses again. So for the most part, it's compressed until food or liquid or whatever goes through, gas, whatever, and then it kind of clamps down again. So that's why the 30 feet is not inflated the whole time. Good question. What else? The stomach itself is 4 liters, which is a little bigger than a gallon, when it's fully expanded. So when somebody says their eyes are bigger than their stomach, probably not true, right? But it's remarkable. The stomach acid is like battery acid. You would think it would dissolve itself. But God designed such a great protective lining in our stomach that it helps digest food, but it doesn't auto-digest itself. And many people thought the appendix was just kind of an appendage, wouldn't really do anything, but actually studies show that it does have a purpose. You can get by without it, of course. Sometimes it does get plugged up with different stuff, but for the most part, it does contain good bacteria that helps populate the bowel and help us with our digestion. So the question of Jeremiah 13:23 says, can the Ethiopian change his skin? Absolutely yes. He does it every month, right? I think they were referring to something else, but anyway. Yes, we do change our skin every month. It's the largest organ of the body. It's often a trivial question, right? It's the largest organ of the body. It's skin. Offers protection and temperature regulation. That's why we sweat. Obviously, dogs. My daughter's a veterinarian. Pant. They don't sweat. We could pant, but we sweat. It's an important part of the immune system. As you can see, every square inch of your skin has about 30 million bacteria. So the skin is so impervious that it's able to keep those bacteria out, for the most part, for invading it. So obviously if you get a cut or step on a nail, if you want to get a tetanus shot regularly, and if you have a bad infection, or a bad cut, you want to get some antibiotics so you can get a bad infection. But for the most part, it does its work pretty well. Heals itself fairly quickly, much faster than most organs, most cells, and we shed a lot of skin cells every year. As far as I just want to say this now, so before I talk about the immune system, as far as just the immune system and bacteria, it's estimated that, it's going to be a gross piece of information here, that a 10-second kiss transmits 80 million bacteria. to the recipient. So I don't know whether that works out to, 8 million per second, or how that all works, but the point is that mucous membranes and the skin are very, very good at keeping, these germs from invading us. Immune system is way complicated. I'm not going to go through that, so don't worry. But the point is, this looks like how all the immune system works together. It's actually not. It's just one cell. That's how this one cell is interacting with other cells and all the things that happen in one cell to help keep us from, dying from overwhelming infection. And there's many different components to our ability to fight off germs. You got white corpuscles, you have something called neutrophils and lymphocytes, and you have different types of lymphocytes, B cells, T cells, you have something called cytokines and other immune modulators, you have antibodies that develop to try to help keep bacteria out of our system. Then you have things like the skin itself and the gut, the mucous membranes, the lungs, all have different aspects. So when we're interacting with our germ-filled environment, that we don't succumb usually to infection. 1.8 trillion immune cells spread throughout our body. Innate versus adaptive, meaning there's some immune system that we're born with. Some of it comes from early on from the placenta through the mom, but there's stuff that we're born with, and there's others that are adaptive. So for example, you're exposed to a particular germ, your body develops antibodies to it. So if you're exposed to that germ again, there's something called an amnestic response where the body is able to quickly attack that, kind of like the Marines, I guess, moving in on the beachhead before the other guys are able to get there. So they can mobilize quickly and help, so you don't have to get sick as easily. And just as an aside, the War of the Worlds, what killed the aliens? What saved us from the Martians? Right? It's our germs. The germs attacked them because they didn't have an immune system. So if we didn't have an immune system, we wouldn't be able to survive as well. But it's an extremely, extremely complex. Again, that's just one cell that goes on, and just how all these different parts of our immune system interact and help each other, kind of like the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, all interact to try to protect us from foreign invaders. This system helps us, our bodies, from foreign invaders like different germs, bacteria, viruses, fungus, fungi, etc. We're almost to the end. Couple things here, and just again, you have the saliva glands, you have 3 pairs of salivary glands, and how they work almost without fail. Hardly anybody, their salivary glands fail, but it produces enough saliva, you can see, to fill 2 swimming pools. I don't know what size swimming pools, but anyway, that's what it said. The body gives off enough heat to boil a gallon of water every half hour. So if this glass is 2 hours, or 1 hour, you could boil 2 gallons of water with the heat everybody produces. Different scents you can detect, perhaps some scents we don't want to detect, but there are 50 different scents. Sneezing 100 miles an hour, that's why you want to cover your mouth so you don't get somebody else. And then the clotting cascade. We have a relationship where, if you cut yourself, you don't want to, bleed to death, so you have to clot, right? Or if you go to surgery, you want to clot. But on the other hand, if it's, under circumstances, you can clot too much, and then you get a blood clot, that, depending where it is, can cause a heart attack or blood clot in your lung or your leg or whatever. So there's a fine balance between clotting too much and not enough. So all these different factors interact with each other to try to keep that system stable from not coagulating and nor under and bleed to death. And again, so many different organs play a factor in that. Again, just speaks to the complexity of our body. Yes?
When we yawn, why do we shoot out spit? At the bottom of your tongue.
Oh, what, shoot out spit? I didn't, why do it?
Yeah, how does it happen?
When the question is, why do we produce saliva like we do?
No, when you yawn, right? Imagine looking in the mirror, you yawn, and there's spit that flies onto the mirror. Like it's from under your tongue. That doesn't
So what?
You're the only one.
The question is, why do you spit out saliva when you yawn or whatever?
Yeah, it's like something.
How does that happen?
Spits comes out.
Well, you got, you have saliva in your mouth all the time, right? Mine's diminishing as I speak, but yes, you have saliva all the time. There's different salivary glands, and 2 of them are sublingular. So if they're under pressure, they come out under your tongue. Then you have some that come out behind your second molar, and you have submandibular glands. So you get sets of salivary glands. So if it's under pressure, it's just gonna squirt out.
Spitting on ears.
Well, they're,
Oh.
yeah, they're like right here. Yeah, 2 parotids, sublingual and submandibular glands that produce the saliva. Yeah. As we get older, our saliva production decreases. What helps is making sure you drink plenty of fluids, so you have good quality saliva. Yes, sir.
So in addition to all these bacteria that rest on our skin but don't invade us, and we take in through our airway that don't invade us, and we take in through our GI that don't invade us, doesn't the immune system also regulate cancer cells that form continuously in our bodies?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's different theories. The question is, does the body's immune system also not only just fight off germs, but do they help protect us against cancer cells? Cancer is much more common in organs where they reproduce quickly, like colon cancer, for example, where the gut cells reproduce. If the cell's rapidly growing, there's more chance, that something bad can go on. Kind of like if you drive your car 1 mile, you're less likely to get an accident if you drive, 100 miles, just statistically. So it's thought that the immune system plays a role, that probably cancer cells develop in our body all the time. And because, again, we have every second, we have 3 million cells that are turning over, dividing and replicating and turning over. So that, right, they feel that the immune system plays a role in searching out those cancer cells, and again, probably with 99.99999% efficiency, are able to detect those and destroy them, right? And it's interesting with the immune system is able to distinguish between what's good and bad. Every now and then the system can go awry, and you get certain diseases that the body attacks itself. But for the most part, when you consider how fast those cells are replicating, how healthy we stay for the most part is pretty remarkable. Before, when God created us, we're made out of different parts. So the actual value of the components that we are made of are estimate between $1 worth of parts and $100 worth of parts. That's all you're worth, from a component. That's our worth from a component standpoint. So to me, again, it's remarkable. God took those relatively little valued parts and made us worth, infinite value in His eyes, and hopefully in each other's eyes. So again, I think remarkable how you can take, $100 worth of parts and put something together as complex as we are and still have that much value in God's eyes. I think that's, again, incredible. But anyway, it's, different components, most of us are made out of carbon, but you have, copper and phosphorus and all different parts, calcium for the bones. So again, putting all that together and having all function well, just through the little DNA in our chromosomes is amazing. And to come back to where we started, I think hopefully, as we briefly, big overview here, can tell that we are truly fearfully and wonderfully made by our Creator. Thank you. Questions? Yes, sir.
I got 2.
Yes, sir.
With dementia, one of my parents had dementia. What causes that exactly? And some people never get it that you would think, And then one other thing is, I've had some parts put in my body just recently.
So you're worth more than.
And I know if people have a heart transplant or different organs, they have to take things to keep it from rejecting it. Why doesn't it reject when they put metal parts in?
We'll do one question at a time. So the first question is, what causes dementia? We don't know for sure. We know what the component is. There's amyloid that gets deposited in our brain, and something called neurofibrillary tingles that cause the brain to not function well. Usually attacks are short-term center than long-term. Some people feel it's attacked short-term more because the blood flow to the short-term memory bank, which is separate than the long-term, seems to be more affected. Certain things put you at risk for that. Certainly family history, unfortunately, can do that. The earlier the family member who gets dementia, the higher the risk it is, but it's certainly not inevitable. The brain does deteriorate over time, unfortunately. Your brain size when you're born is bigger than it is as we get older. The cells do shrink, and as you saw from the slide, they don't regenerate usually. Certain ethnicities, women actually have a higher risk of dementia than men. But we don't really know the exact mechanism. They are coming out with different things to try to combat it now. There's debate how good they are. They're very expensive. Some of these infusions, if you catch it early, are like over $10,000 per month. These infusions, which have to go on for a year or more. They're coming out with a pill soon, if they haven't already, but they're extremely expensive. But we don't really know. Things that help prevent dementia, actually exercise is an extremely important part. Good healthy diet, high antioxidants are helpful. Regular brain activity, and learning new material, like not just doing the same thing over and over again, but learning new stuff as we get older. Sleep deprivation is a risk factor. If you do sleep on an average less than 7 hours per night, that's an increased risk of dementia. People who are, believe it or not, higher average intelligence have a slightly lower risk of that, but I've certainly seen many, unfortunately, physicians and other people who have got dementia as well. But as far as because the body, when you have like a heart transplant, it's a living tissue, or a kidney transplant is a living tissue. Metal is not. So they designed the metal so it's not as likely to stimulate an immune, because the body doesn't interpret that as a foreign invader like it would a different set of receptors on a heart transplant cell or a kidney cell. Right. But good question. Thanks. Yes.
First one is lip sanitizer. You heard it here first. This is for everybody with the 80 million bacteria during the kiss. Second one is your eyeballs, that we were born with the same eyeballs that we were the same size. My millennial roots challenged that, so I went straight to Google. And
I always trust Google. Yes.
yes. It says that we're born with our eyeballs are 75% the size when we're born, but they grow mostly during puberty, which explains why our eyes are open during puberty, I guess.
So they're 75%. So close. Yes, Adam.
Two things. What's your best guess as to why early biblical humans lived hundreds of years, and maybe what changed? And then maybe related to that is there's like modern day billionaires are investing a lot in extending human life, and like I don't know if you've read anything about it. Like, what's your take on that and its potential to extend human life?
Sure. Well, the first question is, why did people live much longer in the ancient biblical time, initially, at least before the flood, than before? I think that's partially a theological question, but I would tend to say it's just because there wasn't as many, we live in a fallen world. I think part of that is just what we've done to our cells and the environment, and other things affect our lifespan. But I think part of it, from a theological standpoint, was that God let people live longer to try to populate the earth, in a quicker way. And there probably wasn't as many germs around either. I don't think there was as much, probably bacteria and stuff around then. That would be my best guess, but we didn't study that in medical school. As far as the, people trying to prolong life by, people have frozen their part of their cells or persons and stuff, that I really don't know. I know things, I don't know whether you just read recently that they found some organism that was frozen for 1,000 or more years, and they defrosted it and it started to replicate. So that was a very simple, 1 or 2 cell organism. So whether that can happen for us, that I don't know. Personally, just hope the Lord comes first before you really. I think the other question back here first. So, yes, ma'am.
So if the body is used as the church is, we use the metaphor of the body, would you say there are any spare parts in a human body? Or said another way, can we exist inside the Church of Christ and be inactive, not using our talents for the body?
Could we or should we? The question is, is there any spare parts in our body, and can you use that as an analogy for the body of Christ? I mean, sure. I mean, you can get by with one kidney, you can get by with partial liver, you can get a heart transplant. So I think some organs are I don't say more valuable. I don't want to say that, but you can get by with. You can get by without the appendix. The appendix does have a role. Your tonsils play a role. Tonsils help with our immune system, but sometimes they get diseased and they cause more problems than worth. But so there's certain things that we can get by with, but I think in the body of Christ, I think we all need to be functioning and contribute to our body, just like any organ here that you have needs to contribute to the body. Whether you're your big toe plays an important part in your balance and how you walk and your gait, and your foot is bad, it can, that little nursery rhyme where the leg bone's connected to the hip bone, whatever. There's a lot of truth to that. Your foot, your gait's off, it can mess up your knee, your hip, your back. So yeah, it's all connected. And I think, like the Bible says, if one part doesn't do its job, it can certainly affect all of us. Yes, yeah.
I just wanted to piggyback on what Adam had brought up about the ages in patriarchal biblical times. I think it vastly depends on your interpretation of the flood and whether it happened, historical event, because the literature that I've read is that if it did happen, it would have shattered an earth that we don't understand, releasing just vast amounts of radiation. That's why you see Earth or lifespans plummet immediately after the flood. That's not necessarily a hill to die on. It's just an interesting idea to kind of wrap your head around. So,
Thank you. Anybody else? I think we're almost out of time here.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So why is it, the basic question is, why can't we live longer? And so I'm just thinking about, this guy's born, or girl is born, and body's building up, and they're getting stronger, and the bones are getting stronger, and everything's good, and becoming alive and everything. And what stops? I mean, why does it keep going like that? Why do we gotta die? Why can't we just keep going?
Well, number one, do you want to live on this earth forever?
It's kind of fun right now.
I think heaven's going to be a little better. So. But cells do deteriorate over time. The replication process diminishes over time. You do get exposed to our environment with disease that breaks things down. There are people who say die of old age at 100. I think my oldest patient was 105 or 106 when she passed away. She had dementia by that time. But why certain things just die, whether it succumbs to just it can't replicate anymore. The chromosomes do deteriorate over time. They just again, these cells are replicating, and at some point that they just I don't want to say they can't do it anymore. I'm not sure about that. But our chromosomes do deteriorate over time. As an aside, you have something called telomeres on ends of chromosomes to try to help stabilize them. And there was a study that came out, within the last couple of months, they compared people who didn't take 2,000 units of vitamin D a day to those who did, and there was less age-related changes in the chromosomes because it seemed to help stabilize the telomere. So that's just a contraindication. You may want to take 2,000 units of vitamin D to try to help slow that aging process down. But brain cells do die over time. Dementia, unfortunately, is sometimes a complication of that. Sometimes we're our own worst enemy. We don't exercise, we don't get enough sleep. Stress, certainly physical and emotional stress, really plays a role in our body and affects our immune system that makes us more susceptible to breakdown. But why we don't live forever, we will when, we will someplace, our souls will anyway, but anyway. Yeah, yes.
So do you think if Adam and Eve hadn't sinned, would men have died? I'm like, were we destined originally to live forever? Is that part
The
of?
question is, if Adam and Eve hadn't sinned, would we
Would they have
live together, live forever?
Yeah, I know it's more like theological, I guess.
Yeah, I say that's more theological than medical.
Sin was death entered via sin.
You'd be out
I
of
don't know.
job.
That's true. Yeah, when we get to heaven, I'm out of a job. Yeah, they do say, and I don't, it's more theological anyway, too, if there's no more death or crying or pain and God's gonna wipe all the tears from our eyes, why do we need the leaves for the healing of the nation? And that, so somebody said, and maybe I'd be in charge of the leaves, maybe. That'd be my role. Yes, sir.
So, a lot of people are diagnosed being vitamin D deficient. If you supplement yourself with pills or whatever, and there's prescriptions I think you can take for vitamin D. How much is that is actually absorbed into your body?
The question is, it was a question about vitamin D and how much vitamin D do you need. There's a lot of controversy on that. If you ask my wife that question, she will give you a very different answer than I would. Maybe I'll give the mic to her so you can get the other side. Okay. Yeah, I think it's certainly important. And once you get above the border between South and North Carolina, the way the sun rays come in, we do not get enough vitamin D. Somebody estimated you have to stand outside for 4 hours a day in your bathing suit to get enough vitamin D to adequately replace how much you need. Vitamin D does certainly play a role in immune function and bone health. Some people felt that the reason why African Americans got more COVID in the Northeast when COVID hit in 2020 is because their vitamin D levels were low because they were so far north and their skin was dark and could get it. So there was a study out of the United States and Australia, two completely separate studies, and they tried to correlate things like cancer, heart disease, longevity, et cetera, with vitamin D levels. And both studies, which were independent, did not show any correlation between vitamin D levels and health outcome. Now, there are anecdotal and smaller studies that refute that, but in general, that's what they did. The American College of Internal Medicine people reviewed all the data on vitamin D a couple years ago, and they put out a position paper, meaning their opinion, that everybody should just take 2,000 units of vitamin D3, D2 is not as good, D3 a day, and let it ride and not even check levels. Now, there's rheumatologists and cancer doctors and Dr. Teresa Jackson who disagree with that, who feel that levels are important to be checked and that they should be over a certain level, what did you say, 60 or 80?
50 to 80 is
50 to 80, and the level should be doing that. Once this just as an economic point, and I don't know whether you've seen this or not, but since that study came out showing no correlation between vitamin D levels and health outcome, some of the insurances have stopped paying for vitamin D levels because they said it doesn't really matter what your D level is based on these huge studies. And in my lab charges $120 to get a vitamin D level. It's an out-of-pocket cost. So some insurances still pay for that, some not. But I would take at least 2,000 units. It is a fat-soluble vitamin. So I think over the counter they sell actually 2,000 or 10,000 units of vitamin D that I've had people take a day. That is way too much because it is fat-soluble. You can take all the B12 and B1 and B whatever you want. It's water-soluble and you're just going to excrete it. But you can get vitamin D toxicity and E toxicity and stuff. We don't have time to talk about the vitamins, but anyway.
So how does that work with diabetic medications where they say that it depletes your body of B12 and iron, or that you need to take that to maximize the function of that medication?
Sure. I mean, if we're out of time, I'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
Do I have 1 minute? No.
Yeah.
The question is about supplements if you're diabetic, about vitamin D and iron and that type of thing. I don't know if you take metformin for vitamin D, that does, in about 10% of people, deplete B12. So it's not a standard, but a lot of us do check B12 levels once a year if you're on metformin, which are common diabetic. I don't know whether, and if somebody knows different, let me know, but I don't know if diabetes in and of itself depletes that. Iron, you have to be very careful. If you take too much iron, especially for men, It actually increases the viscosity of the blood and increases your risk for clots and heart attacks. So you don't want to indiscriminately place. That's why most vitamins, either ladies postmenopausal or men at any time, should have no iron in it, because it can cause problems. Ladies often take vitamins of iron if they're pregnant or especially heavy menstrual periods, but since we don't menstruate, thank goodness.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, sir.
Give me another hand, if you would. Just a couple closing comments. So we've been talking about stuff out there, or over there, or in the woods and stuff. This is about you and your body. If nothing else, this should make you just so thankful that you got a body that works like that. You know, I want to point to each one of y'all and say, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? My goodness, it is absolutely amazing. I can tell my index finger to move and my organs are working and I'm hearing God. This is a miracle right here. It don't look like much of a miracle, but it's a miracle right here. So at the least, thank God that He gave you this amazing body that you can do all these neat things in. Isn't that wonderful? You're dismissed.